Hello, hi everyone, good evening. To those who are in the room and those that are joining us online, welcome to the final event of the second cohort of the New York City Mass Timber Studio. My name is Gizem Karagaz. I have the honor of being one of the co-leads of this program and also your moderator for this evening. So we are thrilled to have you here to celebrate the work of the second cohort of project teams that are advancing mass timber in New York City. Tonight is all about collaboration, innovation, and impact. The Mass Timber Studio launched in 2023 with the goal of supporting active design and development projects here in New York. We saw an opportunity to align the city's emerging climate policies with the tremendous benefits that mass timber has to offer, from reducing carbon emissions to improving health and well-being for the communities that will occupy these buildings. However, big ambition also needs to be met with thoughtful approach to implementation. So the studio was created to meet the moment by providing the tools, the expertise, the feedback loops that are needed to ensure mass timber projects are safe, sound, and ready to move from concept to construction. The teams you'll hear from tonight have explored a wide range of topics aimed at advancing feasibility and scaling mass timber in New York. They've asked questions such as, how can mass timber be integrated into complex urban sites and existing building stock? How do we optimize for fire safety and durability while maintaining design flexibility? Over the next 2 hours, here we go. Over the next 2 hours, you'll hear insights from our project teams and program partners reflecting on 8 months of analysis. We'll begin with opening remarks from EDC and DOB leadership, followed by project presentations. Midway through, we'll pause for a panel discussion that connects project-level learnings with a higher-level vision for mass timber in New York City. And as you'll see tonight, innovation in construction does not happen in isolation. It requires leadership from those who safeguard the integrity of our built environment and champion progress. Tonight, we're joined by leadership from EDC, the Department of Buildings, and FDNY. To kick things off, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome someone who has been instrumental in driving innovation across projects of all scales. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Josh Kraus, EDC's Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Thank you so much, Gizem. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the final review of the Mass Timber Studio. My name is Josh Kraus, and as Gizem said, I have the pleasure of serving as EDC's Chief Infrastructure Officer. I've been here chatting with folks and checking out some of the posters, and I've got to say, the level of enthusiasm and the quality of the work and ideas that I've seen tonight is simply off the charts. I'm so excited to be a part of it. And I want to start off by thanking our partners at FDNY, DOB, MOCEJ, Newlab, the Softwood Lumber Board, and the U.S. Forest Service, without whose support none of this would be possible. We'll be hearing more from DOB in just a moment, but first I'd like to quickly share why EDC is so proud to be sponsoring this event, how it fits into our overall effort to reduce the embodied emissions of construction in New York City, and connect this work to our larger mission of growing New York City's economy. In 2019, the city set nation-leading operational carbon reduction targets with Local Law 97. We see embodied carbon as the next frontier in the city's decarbonization efforts. That's why in 2022, the city set ambitious targets to reduce embodied carbon emissions by 50% by 2033 on city construction projects. At EDC, we're tackling this challenge in 2 ways. The first is through facilitating circular construction and materials reuse, and the second is by scaling the use of low-carbon alternative materials, particularly bio-based construction materials like mass timber. On the first point, EDC has developed clean and circular design and construction guidelines, check them out on our website, that shape how we carry out construction projects at EDC. In Lower Manhattan at the Battery Coastal Resiliency Project, we have achieved Envision Platinum by using innovative urban mining and low carbon construction principles. Phase 1 of the battery is due to open soon, and we can't wait for everyone to see for themselves that using circular construction principles isn't just sustainable, the results are also quite beautiful. At the Red Hook Library in Brooklyn and Orchard Beach Pavilion in the Bronx, we have embraced an innovative reuse of existing structures to create modern, universally designed, and flood-resilient spaces for local communities to enjoy for decades to come. And I recently stood with Governor Hochul and former Mayor Adams to celebrate the amazing progress we're making on the Spark campus at Kips Bay, and to announce that deconstruction of the existing CUNY buildings would be starting in the first quarter of this year. And when we say deconstruction rather than demolition, that's exactly what we mean. We're taking pains to maximize the reuse of every possible element within that structure, everything from granite slabs to light fixtures. We are setting a standard, we are holding ourselves accountable, and we're hoping to inspire our peers in the public and private sectors in New York City and beyond. Outside of our own capital projects, we're also working to de-risk the materials and technologies needed to decarbonize our construction sector. That's what tonight is all about. The NYC Mass Timber Studio is a great example of this. We've brought together, as we know, 7 public and private sector development teams working with DOB and FDNY to ensure mass timber projects meet all safety and regulatory requirements so they can proceed smoothly through design and into construction. We're also proud to say that 2 of the projects participating in the studio tonight are EDC projects. First, the new Stapleton waterfront development on Staten Island's North Shore, a mixed-use development that will consist of over 500 much-needed residential units and will serve as New York City's largest residential mass timber development. And the DOT Dock Builders Pier, a 3,100 square foot building that will support Staten Island ferry operations. Both are critical to advancing EDC's North Shore Action Plan to deliver a vibrant, mixed-use waterfront community on Staten Island's North Shore. Creating a more sustainable construction sector is not just about reducing emissions. It will also help the city grow its economy. You may have already heard about the city's Green Economy Action Plan released by EDC in February of 2024, which outlines over 60 actions to grow climate-critical sectors in New York City and create new opportunities for all New Yorkers. That plan lays out a vision to grow New York City's green economy to 400,000 jobs by 2040. Building decarbonization is the largest driver of green economy jobs, and we are just getting started. So, this evening is first and foremost a celebration of the great progress that these 7 project teams, along with DOB and FDNY and everyone else, has made over the course of 9 months. But it's also an opportunity for us to think bigger. How can we scale mass timber? What will it take to develop supply chains and build industry capacity to take mass timber from a niche idea to a much more common way of doing development? And beyond that, what are the next big ideas that you have to help reduce our embodied carbon footprint? EDC wants to hear from you. You can send ideas to the team's email address, masstimberstudio@edc.nyc, or find someone from EDC in the room tonight. We mean it. We want to hear from you. Can folks from EDC raise your hand real quick? You can find us. You can talk to me. We are super excited, once again, to be here and to see what tonight will bring and to see where we can go from here. So thank you once again for all the work that you all do and for being here on a chilly night. It is now my great pleasure to invite up a tremendous partner in this work, my dear friend and our new DOB commissioner here on day 1, Ahmed Tigani.
Hello, everybody. Oh, we have an upper deck. This is a big event. When you have a second story, you know mass timber has come into its own. There is a second story of people who want to be here and talk about this. Hi, my name is Ahmed Tigani. This is day one. I am incredibly excited to be able to take the helm at the Department of Buildings. It's an institution that, in my previous role as acting commissioner of HPD, I sought their partnership on, I got their guidance, I sought their ability to help us figure out how to move the ball forward on the critical issue of addressing our housing crisis. But now at DOB, I get to be working with some incredible people like the fantastic members of the Code and Zoning Interpretation team to figure out not only how we advance affordability in our residential buildings, but also how do we create that opportunity for the economic resiliency that we need, for the social resiliency that we need. How do we both think about how we protect our planet, but also build the planet in a way where people have access to be able to operate the businesses that will provide the services that New Yorkers and people who travel to our city deserve, or create the healthcare facilities and community health centers that we need to make sure that our neighbors and our families are well. There is so much that we have to do and build out to make sure that we are providing for the city that we want to have in the 21st century. And to be overtly reliant on an older way of thinking how we construct those buildings, to be not open-minded to the information and the data that we're seeing that allows us to think more broadly about what we're bringing to the mix, especially at a time where construction is seeing increased costs, at a time where we're seeing insurance rates and labor and so many complications of building in a tight, squeezed urban space challenge our ability to deliver at not only the level of standard excellence that people in New York expect, but on the time delivery that people want, and in a way that meets those climate protection goals that we heard so many people talk about today. So that's why it was so important for me to be here on day one. That's why I'm really glad that I get to be here at this moment. I wasn't here for the previous meetings, but better late than never, right? At the point of time that we're in, where we have a mayor who is speaking about affordability and about standard of excellence, is always important. I want to acknowledge, it's been said, but I want to keep acknowledging the fact that the agencies in this room, whether it's the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, EDC, FDNY, DOB, we are not individual fiefdoms. We are collective public servants at a time where public service is here to deliver for you, the people in your room. And we are so fortunate that you have decided to spend your time, your energy, your talent, where it could be elsewhere, to come move forward ideas in a studio setting to hopefully take things from ideation, make them practical, put them in the ground, and make them there for people to see, to adopt, to replicate, and to grow. The promise of mass timber will be borne out in additional conversations, in code changes, in financial industry conversations, creating for the broader public and our partners a level of practicality, of consistency, dependability that's needed if we want to grow that structure. From an agency perspective, and as an agency leader, I know that my responsibility to the people in this room, especially on the second floor, is that when we move these ideas forward and we work out the kinks, we have to step up to figure out how we build the foundation for you to grow. How do we use the public tools in our domain, whether it's the rules and regs, whether it's our relationship with the financial sector, whether it's the inspectoral process or the administrative process, to make it easier to take these good ideas and bring it to more places in one of the most wonderful, complicated, exciting and aggravating, but still adventurous urban landscapes across this wonderful globe. So I'm delighted to know that DOB is playing a role in this. I'm excited to, again, work with far more smarter colleagues at DOB in figuring out what we can do to help advance it. And I look forward to seeing the presentations tonight. And on day 2, I'll make sure I'll read a little bit more. But by day 15, I'll still not know enough. But I plan to be here for the long haul, and I plan to be your partner for the long haul. Thank you for the opportunity to get to speak today, and looking forward to working with you for a much longer time to come.
Thank you, Commissioner Tagani. It's an honor to have you here with us on day 1, and we're excited to continue to work on this mission together with you. Before we dive into presentations, I'd like to take a moment to frame what tonight is all about with some level setting. So the Mass Timber Studio is a climate innovation program designed to accelerate the adoption of mass timber safely and soundly within the 5 boroughs. Through grants, technical assistance, and regulatory guidance, the studio helps project teams navigate feasibility, design, and permitting challenges while building connections across industry and government. Our objectives are simple, yet ambitious. So the goal is really to advance real-world projects, identify barriers and enablers to mass timber construction, and generate insights that inform policy and market readiness. Ultimately, a lot of this work lays the foundation for a regional mass timber economy. Cohort 2 represents 7 active projects across all 5 boroughs, spanning 800,000 feet of proposed development. These projects range from libraries and schools to affordable housing and civic rec centers. Many are located in environmental justice areas and showcase both ground-up construction and adaptive reuse. As you listen tonight, I'd love everyone to pay close attention to how these teams are tackling design challenges, navigating regulatory pathways, and exploring materiality in ways that could transform our city's built environment. And with that context in mind, let's now move into our first set of project presentations, focused on the intersection of design and code. These include the New York Climate Exchange, 5 timber houses, and Gannon New Academy. Please join me in welcoming our first presenters to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Elifmina Mizrahi, and I am the Capital Project Manager for the New York Climate Exchange. We are so thrilled to be part of the second cohort of the EDC Mass Timber Studio, and we want to thank DOB, FDNY, and all the studio partners for making it possible. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about who we are, why we chose to build in mass timber, and what the studio enabled us to accomplish. So who we are, we're a nonprofit organization focused on tackling the climate challenges that are facing our cities, and we're doing this through a 2-pronged approach. First, we're building a partner network because to do anything in this world, you need collaboration, and to fight climate challenges, you need even more collaboration. And second, we're building a physical place for all that collaboration to happen. So we hope you join us there in 3 years. Our network of partners is really a cross-section of who we think is needed at the table to solve these climate challenges. And if you look at our project site on Governor's Island, you'll probably notice 2 things. One, there are no bridges or tunnels that connect our island to the rest of the city, which means we have a lot of construction challenges that are unique to our site. Second, it's a relatively small campus on a relatively small island, but our ambitions are much, much larger than our square footage. And like previous speakers have said, we recognize that New York City is a leader when it comes to construction, development, real estate, architecture, and we want to build this project to set precedent, to show people what is possible with mass timber. Our project mission is really threefold. We want to advance urban resilience, we want to decarbonize our cities, and we want to build on the public nature of Governor's Island. The Trust for Governor's Island and others have done an incredible job making it a hub for education and inspiration. And we want to build on that feeling you get when you get to the island. You're excited, you want to learn something new. And so when we decided to build in mass timber, it wasn't that we looked at a bunch of building materials and evaluated a long list and came to mass timber. We were actually committed to building in mass timber from day one. This is because mass timber is a perfect material that aligned with our mission perfectly. It's sustainable, it's healthy, biophilic, natural. It's an existing climate solution that has not yet achieved scale in New York City. So we saw an opportunity to be a catalyst for New York City to catch up and ideally to also lead, because we already lead in so many different areas. Mass timber is only one of the components of our project. To really have a world-leading sustainable design, you have to have a comprehensive approach. So I'm not going to get into the details of what's on this slide. Today is about mass timber, but it's only one of our components. I want to take a moment to shout out our incredible team. I have the chance to work with them every single day. SOM, Skanska, MNLA, Burra Hapoel, Langen, these are real leaders in innovative and sustainable construction, and we're so lucky to have their expertise on our project. So a little bit about our project. It's 2 large-scale commercial mass timber buildings, about 140 square feet total. One is a convening center, one is a lab and classroom building, a research and education facility. And these are the 2 mass timber components, but we're also adaptively reusing a historic structure, building 4 acres of open public space. We have on-site geothermal and solar, and we're also partnering with the city to build a resilient waterfront. We're hoping to serve undergraduate students, researchers, and also the general public. We want to invite people in and have people learn about what we are doing. So we are on the Brooklyn side of Governor's Island, right off the ferry terminal. This is a close-up of our mass timber convening center right on the waterfront. And we are actually so lucky to be at the front gate of the island. So we want to engage visitors, whether they come to visit us or whether they are just passing by through a very porous first floor where people can come in. And our interiors very much celebrate mass timber, showcase mass timber. We want you to feel like, wow, why aren't all buildings like this? Why doesn't it feel great to be inside buildings? So before I pass it to my colleague Connor from Skanska to talk about our project-specific challenges, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible work that EDC has done. It's really hard to be the first mover in anything. No organization wants to be the first mover because it's complex, it's costly, and it's encouraging to see that the city acknowledges this and is trying to help smooth the path forward for our project and also for all the other projects that are going to follow afterwards. So we're thrilled to be part of the studio, and I'll pass it over to Connor to talk about our project-specific challenges.
All right. Thanks, Elfmina. Like she said, I'm Connor Devine. I'm a project executive with Skanska, who's the construction manager for the Climate Exchange, one very small piece of a large dedicated team. I just want to start here. Mass timber experience for us in particular. We have a bit of it across the country and around the world, and that's really important for building mass timber at this scale of the Climate Exchange in New York City, because we have a lot of places to call on experience, whether that be the regulatory environment in a different city, state, country, whether that be construction best practices, design optimization, material sourcing, whatever it may be. There's a lot of people that have done this elsewhere that we can call on. And then just to blow up locally in the Northeast, we've done a couple mass timber projects. Maybe unsurprisingly, a lot of them end up being in the higher education space. That seems to be where this is gravitated to most, climate exchange in a similar field. We're working on the Tompkinsville Esplanade, which is very much adjacent to one of the projects you'll hear about a little bit later today. That's the first project that we're doing mass timber in the DOB's jurisdiction. Underway, it'll be an interesting project, and we're excited for that as well. As far as the overall kind of studio, a lot of people probably have a lot of the same comments, but I think for us, the hurdles that we're trying to work through really broke down into two areas. And one of them is the DOB's requirements for type 4 mass timber construction, in addition to just the general requirements of the International Building Code. And the second being the Chapter 33 requirements of the New York City Building Code, those being maybe not so much architecture, but that's safeguards during demolition and construction. So that's less the what we're building and how we're building it, the rules we have to follow. And again, there's been some specific requirements kind of appended to that chapter specifically for type 4 buildings. I'll just talk about a few of the things that we're facing, a couple of hurdles for our building in particular, and others in the cohort had similar things. The first for us is stair towers. So as the code is written, permanent stair tower structure independent from the timber needs to be at least 2 stories above the working floor. For the climate exchange job, there's SOMs kind of put together a holistic approach to integrate timber throughout the whole structure to make that structure as sustainable as possible. So through the studio, and we continue to work and discuss with DOB and FDNY, how can we go forth with that hybrid structure and make this truly as sustainable a building and a structure as it can be. We're going to skip that, we're short on time. Temporary protection of connections, this is another huge one. I think this is something that everybody had something to say about in the studios, but effectively, again, the way the code's written, any connection needs to be protected at the end of a shift. So apply that to a steel building. Any connection on a steel building would have to be spray fireproofed at the end of shift. That's the one-for-one comparison. So practically speaking, that's tough to do, that's costly. And we're really excited at this point to have bought our design assist partner, Metropolitan Timber, on. Eric's in this room somewhere, and their partners all the way in the back, I see a hand, Aspect and Element 5. And that team, along with SOM, has really dove deep into detailing and connection design so that the connection is made and the fire rating is there, rather than have to do it after and add all that cost and things. So we're excited with the way that's going. And then the last big one for us is storage of lumber. Elifmina mentioned we're on an island. The only way on and off is a barge. And again, the way the code's written, you can store 1,920 cubic feet of timber on a job. That's roughly no more than 2 trailers. So a job of our scale, it just doesn't work. What you typically see, the pictures along the bottom, is how you'd typically stage a job. You'd put the timber on the working deck and go. 2 trucks won't do it for us, especially being on an island. There's no opportunity for just-in-time deliveries. There's no opportunity for staging trailers throughout the day. So we've had a lot of conversations via the studio, especially with the FDNY, the DOB, on how we can approach this given our specific constraints of being on an island. And we have a couple different options we're pursuing, and we're excited to kind of narrow in and agree on one together and apply that to make this job happen as effectively as we can. That's all we have time for. It's a short presentation. That is by no means everything that we discussed in the studio, but we do want to say thank you to EDC for putting the studio together, to DOB, FDNY, and all the other partners that lended their expertise or lended their ear to hear about our hurdles and try to solve them. We're not there yet, but this is the starting point of a long process. So thank you guys for organizing this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Lifton from Mesh Architectures. I am a development partner in this project, the 5 timber houses, in addition to being the architect. And that's actually a key thing, because doing these projects is difficult and it can be challenging to get them off the ground. Very gratified that our new commissioner is here, and thank you for coming, because we need a lot of support in this area, and we're gratified for that. So we have been interested in doing passive house design, low energy house for a long time, for well over a decade. And then about 7 years ago, we got into doing mass timber construction, mass timber design. So we've completed one. This is timber house in Park Slope. That was completed a few years ago. And we have a couple more happening. We have one house that's in construction and other houses that are in design upstate, in addition to the one that you're going to see tonight. This is the one in construction. And, mass timber construction is it's unusual process if you're used to the way that concrete and steel buildings are built here in New York City. It's very different, and I think we're all still figuring out how to do it best. And that's why doing this project, which consists of 5 houses in Park Slope, is actually instructive even for other kinds of buildings like the multifamily buildings that are prevalent here in the city, because as we learn techniques and assemblies, we can take those and use them in other places on other projects. So we wanted to know on this project, it was a program for 5 houses, can we do 5 CLT houses? And if you're familiar with mass timber, CLT are those thick slabs that are made out of dimensional lumber, and it's a material that's strong, it's beautiful, it goes together quickly, it has so many beneficial attributes, and of course, very sustainable in terms of being a renewable resource. So could we build houses out of CLT, which we were not able to previously do? The code was changed a couple of years ago and allowed us to do that. So this is your kind of house section, and we looked at how we're going to do our houses, and one of the big decisions was putting the living space on the 2nd floor, the bedrooms above that, the swings, the kind of more flexible spaces below that, and this is the kind of normal design that you'd see in any house project. So one thing you get with mass timber is the structure being the finish of the house inside. Now outside you can't expose the mass timber except in select ways because of weather exposure. But it's great to have this material, which is the actual structure, be the interior of the house. And it's both biophilic and it's also saves material because instead of having to put studs and sheetrock and spackle and paint, you can just kind of finish it with the material that is actually holding the building up. So these are some more views of that, the different spaces that we have. And it's a great, it makes spaces that we're just not used to seeing, and that's what makes working in mass timber so exciting. This is the view of the corner house, which is like the other ones, but has the second exposure around the corner, and so it's a little bit different. So we came up with different assemblies, how we're going to clad our building. Again, it's going to be built to passive house standards. So we have air sealing, we have insulation. This is an ultra low energy building according to the DOB's definition of that. So we spent a lot of time really working on the section of the house, how we're going to, how we do the envelope, and in fact, how we do the space between the buildings, the houses themselves. We also have advanced systems here. Everything, of course, is electric. We have very sophisticated air-to-water heat pumps. These are the ones that don't take the refrigerant out of the immediate environment of the machines themselves and just circulate cold or hot water around the house, which is safer than delivering refrigerant all around the house. We use ERVs to provide conditioned fresh air at all times, and we have solar panels on the roof. So these are just 3 of the floors. I know it's kind of hard to see from where you're sitting, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. But basically, again, we have the first floor is the entry and the swing space, the kind of flexible spaces that you could use for an extra bedroom or a home office. Second floor is your living floor with your living room and your kitchen where the family can hang out. Third floor is your primary bedroom suite and more bedrooms above that. The outside of the building, as I said, can't be timber, and so we had great success on our previous building using these handmade bricks, which are beautiful. The whole neighborhood around this is in Park Slope, there's a lot of brick around there, and so it's it's contextual, even though a lot of the aspects of the building are not similar to the neighborhood, but the bricks are beautiful, they're practical, they're a good match for the mass timber structure that sits behind them. So, like all the groups, we had our challenges, and the Mass Timber Studio was very helpful. So the first thing was we started off trying to do all CLT. Then we realized that was not going to be possible because we learned that CLT shear walls were not legal. So we shifted to using concrete shear walls. And then we thought, well, we're doing concrete shear walls, so we'll also do a concrete party wall to help support our slabs. Then we learned that, that the concrete party walls were not going to be we can't do those. Party walls are not good for 4-story buildings in New York City. So instead we shifted to do a post and beam structure. So we have a glulam structure with CLT floor slabs. We make this concrete transparent. You can see the glulam structure there. This is how it looks in plan. And then we have a pretty elaborate but good firewall assembly between each pair of houses with the glulam structure. This is how that looks, the structure. We have great partners. T.Y. Lin is our structural engineer, and we've had great experience working with them to develop the structural scheme. And we have to deal with protecting our connections. It's one of the big hitches. We also have to deal with Chapter 33, which is a difficult thing to do. We did a nice analysis. This is from T.Y. Lin's analysis of how much embodied carbon is saved in the structure compared to the base case of a steel frame building with concrete decks, 25%. And this does not count the other savings we get, for example, not having to use a lot of sheetrock and other materials, so it's a much more lightweight structure. And then this is the LCA analysis that we did in Tally, and you can see that we use that the actual embodied carbon of our structure is almost zero because of the fact that the wood actually sequesters carbon. And Tally gives us a little bit of a tax for the end of life because it's assuming that we threw away the building. With circular construction, as we learn to do that, we will be able to make use of that wood at the end of the project. So thank you very much to the EDC. We've had a great time in this. We've learned a lot, and it's been great to meet all of our colleagues who are also doing mass timber buildings. Thank you very much.
The Ganenu Academy is a community Jewish K-8 school in Flushing Meadows, Queens, that we've worked with since 2019. The first new construction phase is currently underway. It uses a poured-in-place concrete structural system and is scheduled to complete this summer. As part of the NYCEDC Mass Timber Studio, we've been studying a future phase of the campus that would require approval through the BSA. After seeing our completed Evergreen Charter School project, the client asked us to explore whether a future phase at Ganenu could be built in mass timber. The project team includes myself and Hamad Hassan from Martin Hope Architects, along with the consultants listed on the screen. Design work for Ganenu began in 2019 with a multi-phase master plan. The campus, at the time, included an existing Type 1 FP school in a converted synagogue building, grandfathered under the 1938 code. Currently under construction is a cellar plus 2-story Type 3A concrete addition, filed under the 2022 NYC Building Code. The new and existing buildings are separated by a 3-hour vertical fire separation, and this phase fully maxes out the allowable FAR. Based on the school's long-term program needs, we designed a future 12,000 square foot phase requiring BSA approval. That phase was intentionally limited to match the residential FAR and envisaged as a Type 3 addition. Prior to the 2024 Mass Timber Bulletin from DOB, a mass timber approach would have been viable. After the City of Yes was approved in December 2024, we reassessed the project and found it could support roughly 4,000 additional square feet, effectively an extra floor. This slide summarizes the technical and regulatory issues that emerged as we tested these possibilities. Here are renderings of the Phase 1 addition as imagined, which are currently under construction as imagined in 2019. This shows how the future phase was envisaged in the original 2019 master plan. And here is that same phase re-examined after City of Yes, showing the additional floor.
So in New York City today, there are extremely limited pathways for mass timber vertical expansions. and effectively none for educational buildings, especially in the context of our project. There's 3 commonly accepted approaches used everywhere else: a podium approach, or a type 1A with the type 1A base, a type 3A or B mixed material approach, and where IBC 2024 is being followed, a type 4A, B, or C approach using mixed construction materials. None of these pathways are currently available in New York City following the 2024 Building Bulletin. The podium approach does not allow education occupancies above the podium. It could, however, allow a single-story mass timber addition, such as an assembly or a cafeteria space, if the building were reclassified as type 1A. This approach was previously acceptable and as of right, but is no longer permitted, which under the bulletin, which requires all mass timber to be type 4 heavy timber. Reclassifying the entire building as type 4 heavy timber introduces cost and risk levels that the client considers unacceptable. For code pathway 2 for type 3 construction, what happens is that you can use a mixed construction classification, and that was allowed as of right until very recently. And however, we can no longer do it. And our suggestion here moving forward is to realign the code with the prior understanding. Type 4 mass timber construction, or a type 4 approach, which is what the city follows in which is what is followed throughout New York State, but the city currently follows IBC 2015. A type 4 mixed construction system would again allow for our building and effectively infill and overbuild construction using mass timber to happen in the city again.
So as we were working with DOB, we undertook some back-of-the-envelope analysis of the impacts of the 33 memo, and we came up with a number of roughly 9% in additional costs, not related to the mass timber construction, but to the processes and the organization methodologies that came out of that memo. We understand that life safety, it must be key, but we also think that within that memo, there's a series of line items that could be looked at and reduced to, as we look at affordability, it's important that every line item gets scrutinized to see, is it really necessary? How much can we look at? Because I think for private developers, for private clients, that risk factor attached to the unknown stops a lot of opportunities for mass timber to be taken forward. What we also see is in undertaking an embodied carbon analysis is that there are great opportunities. The 3-floor concrete addition with 1 floor of mass timber addition led to a 24% reduction against the embodied carbon baseline. If we did the full 4 stories in mass timber, that led to nearly a 58% embodied carbon reduction. So we're seeing great embodied carbon opportunities alongside challenges in the regulatory process, which scares off private developers, we think.
So City of Yes, which was approved in December 2024, allows incremental housing and incremental development throughout the city. We believe that City of Yes, in conjunction with mass timber, creates a massive opportunity for densification throughout the city. For Ganeno, this meant that the original building in 2019, the master plan envisioned three floors comprising approximately 520 tons of concrete over the existing foundation for the finals phase. With the City of Yes and the revised master plan, it meant that we could add another 4,500 square feet of additional program space, and mass timber made this possible. 4 stories of mass timber add roughly only 200 metric tons of load, less than half what the concrete weighed, while achieving a 58% embodied carbon reduction. After 2025, if we step back a little bit further, mass timber reveals an even greater infill potential. Without zoning limits, the existing footing could support another 5th floor of education occupancy. And if this was being converted into a residential building, there would be a 6th floor that could be added without modifying the foundations. Mass timber overbuild supports densification, mixed use, and adaptive reuse.
So in enjoying the opportunity to work with DUB and learn about the code and the challenges, we then took it on ourselves to look at it a little bit further. We wanted to look at what are the opportunities and the challenges for vertical expansion projects that we learned about through Ganenu, and to look at how the City of Yes, paired with mass timber, could support residential infill at a citywide scale.
These residential pathways mirror the same code approaches explored earlier applied to typical low-rise building stock across the city using the podium, type 3, and type 4 ABC approaches. We tested this with a 2-story mixed-use building in an R6 transit-oriented neighborhood in Forest Hills, Queens. City of Yes allows residential FAR to increase from 2.2 to 3.9, a roughly 9,400 square foot addition, and an additional height going up to 90 feet. Using mass timber, we can add up to 3 floors or up to 9 to 14 housing units, leaving the existing building largely undisturbed. The most sustainable buildings are the ones that already exist, and the best canvases are the ones that we already have.
Evergreen Charter School, located in Hempstead just outside the city, a project that we've just completed, demonstrates that mass timber can deliver affordable, high-performance institutional buildings at scale, just outside of New York City. It provides real-world precedent for what becomes possible when regulatory pathways align. We believe New York is leaving economic value on the table by not enabling mass timber construction, despite in-state forest resources and regional manufacturing potential. New York City is also missing low-risk opportunities to add housing through vertical expansions on existing 1 to 3-story buildings. The current DOB guidance unintentionally limits those projects by restricting construction to type 4 heavy timber only, while other jurisdictions allow more flexible mixed material approaches. Prescriptive requirements in the Mass Timber Bulletin, Chapter 33, increase cost and risk, making many projects difficult to finance. We think that with targeted code alignment, without compromising safety, we could immediately unlock schools, housing, and mixed-use vertical expansion citywide.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of the first set of presentations. We're going to shift gears into a panel format because we want to ensure that the audience is connecting the through line on some project level learnings into a broader vision for what it will take to scale mass timber in New York City. So please join me in welcoming up Tina Matthew from DOB, Momo Sun from Woodworks, and Meta Brunzema from the Pratt Institute. Okay, hi Momo, Meta, Tina. It's really exciting to have you here with us. I think that you all provide a unique vantage point into the mass timber ecosystem in New York City. And while the project teams are giving us really great examples of opportunities and challenges at site-specific scales, I'd love to have you help us understand what the vision for mass timber in New York City could be and how do we get there. So could I have you start off by first introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about how your role intersects with mass timber?
Sure. Hi, I'm Momo Sun, Senior Regional Director of New York. And I'm based in New York City. Lots of familiar faces, so nice to see everyone, especially for our second cohort this year. Woodworks is a nonprofit organization. We are technical support for all things mass timber. We also help with light frame as well. So my intersection with mass timber, I am a structural engineer by background. I have lots of mass timber design experience from the industry before joining Woodworks. And my main role is technical assistance to all the developers, architects, structural engineers, contractors, installers in New York State when it comes to mass timber design. So trying to lessen that learning curve and provide resources for mass timber design.
Hi, I'm Meta Brunzema. I'm an architect and urban designer, and I'm the director of Pratt's Decarbonization Group. So since 2020, our work has focused on mass timber construction because we see it as one of the most effective ways of decarbonization in cities. The Decarbonization Group is a research accelerator at Pratt Institute, and it's composed of architecture and planning faculty researchers, graduate students, and a multidisciplinary team of experts, including mass timber engineers, architects, prefabrication specialists, as well as forestry and commercialization professionals. We're currently working on 2 mass timber projects. So the first one is development of a new mass timber product called NYNLT. NLT stands for nail laminated timber, and this timber is sourced in New York State. So we are developing and commercializing this product, which is essentially a structural mass timber product made from New York State pine trees. And nail laminated timber, for those of you who don't know this, is a long-standing code-approved mass timber system used in New York City for more than 150 years. So it can be used for floors and ceilings and walls and basically most of the things that, the mass timber that you all know is used for. We're also developing a sort of a related product called NY BioNLT. It's a fully bio-based circular version that uses wood nails instead of metal nails to connect the pieces of wood together. And this system is approved in Europe, but not yet in the United States. So NYNLT, when made out of pine trees, is a product that is specifically, it's very well suited for affordable housing because of the smaller bay sizes. It may not be ideal for all building types, especially those requiring cantilevers or long spans, where CLT or other mass timber systems may be more appropriate. So it's just one other mass timber tool. So our second initiative is a proposal for a large-scale mass timber municipal housing program for the Mamdani administration, using this NYNLT product to build affordable housing on city-owned sites. So, of course, if implemented, this program could deliver major climate benefits and catalyze a robust ecosystem of green jobs and fabrication facilities across both upstate and downstate New York.
Hi, I'm Tina Matthew, Code Development Architect with New York City Department of Buildings, and I got into mass timber a while back. I was thankful to be a part of Cohort 1 with EDC and their mass timber workshop, and currently I serve as a technical advisor for several code committee revision groups because the revision cycle for the New York City Code is going on now. And so I participate in discussions about potential code updates and the review of those provisions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We're at a moment of transition in this city. It's top of mind for me. It's top of mind for a lot of folks in this room. And affordability, housing, community benefit are priorities. And mass timber is one solution that could align with those priorities and also many other city policy goals. I'd love to first start by understanding where you see mass timber as a market opportunity is today. So Momo, maybe my first question is directed to you. There are approximately 20 mass timber projects within the New York metro area. Could you help us understand what common building trends Woodworks is tracking in terms of mass timber development, and where is there more room for leadership, either from institutional clients or from public entities?
Great, thank you. So the mass timber sort of industry is evolving very quickly the last couple of years. So what we've seen more is K-12 schools. Higher education have been very strong the last couple of years. Things like community centers and things like that have really come into play a lot more. Multifamily has always been strong, I think, ever since I've gotten to mass timber a number of years ago. And then also in terms of the way that it's going, tall mass timber. So tall mass timber, anything over 6 stories, over 85 feet. So tall mass timber has really come into play for a lot of the US. So currently we've got, well, as of January, we've got 38 states that have already adopted tall mass timber provisions. And that includes New York State as of January 1st. So if you didn't know that before, you do now. So the sort of the 7 or 8 to 12 story mass timber is quite a sweet spot as well for those that are looking into especially multifamily. So we look forward to more building topology like that as we move along when it comes to building code. And just to be clear, the tall mass timber is provisions for New York State, not New York City yet. I'll leave that for our following questions.
Thank you. And maybe to bring the conversation into New York City's context. So Meta, you briefly mentioned the municipal housing program, mass timber as an opportunity for strategic densification of urban neighborhoods without changing the context of them. Can you talk more about what the scale of housing could be delivered with prefabricated solutions like mass timber? And where do you see the greatest near-term potential?
So our research shows that cost-effective mass timber affordable housing can be delivered fairly rapidly and at scale. So Mayor Mamdani's goal of building 25,000 units of affordable housing on city-owned land can be met with New York State-sourced mass timber or other mass timber systems, by the way, while also generating major climate benefits and green jobs across the supply chain. So we know, and there's a lot of data on this, that mass timber construction is roughly 25% faster than conventional construction due to off-site prefabrication and rapid on-site assembly. And I think this is really meeting one of the goals. I mean, people are really impatient about generating affordable housing in the city, and making it quickly is a real advantage. And because mass timber is up to 40% lighter than steel and concrete, it is exceptionally well suited for vertical extensions, as the previous speaker spoke about, or rooftop additions, often without requiring reinforcement of existing foundations. So vertical mass timber additions are feasible on both city-owned and privately owned properties with available FAR. So for example, we could be building housing above libraries, or building additions to residential buildings in medium density areas that are eligible for the new 20% affordable housing bonus that came through the city of Yes. So, and again, it was nice to hear that, we already heard that these mass timber additions could enable very gentle, very distributed neighborhood densification across the city instead of, mega housing developments that could potentially be controversial.
So the potential's there, but now let's shift gears to talk about how do we get there through code. Tina, the Department of Buildings has been an invaluable partner to the studio. I think our theory of change is, if we can create communication channels and feedback loops in order to ensure that all stakeholders are learning, we can ensure that the adoption accelerates. So from your perspective, can you talk more about what types of projects you found through participating in the studio to be valuable lessons learned that can be surfaced and used to inform code adoption?
Sure. I think that all of the projects that were included in the studio have been great learning vehicles for us at the DOB. This is still a relatively new project type for us, so the more we can learn, the better. And I'm hoping that the specific conditions and nuances of each project will seep into our conversations as we revise the code and continue to discuss the code.
And Momo mentioned that the New York State did adopt the tall mass timber code provisions in January of 2026. We're all looking forward to the next code update in New York City. I know you and your team have been working really diligently with the technical committees since it was last released in 2022. Can you outline first the process of what adapting state and international code into New York City looks like? And then, if I can ask, what is the timeline by which stakeholders can expect to see the next building code?
Sure, good question. So just to give you a general idea, the New York State Code came out recently and was based on the 2024 version of the International Building Code. The current New York City Code, which is the 2022 NYC Code, was based on the 2015 IBC with a little bit from the 2018 IBC. So going into the code revision, we're looking to adopt the 2021 IBC as a base in New York City with modifications. So we want to make sure that we adjust the IBC provisions to suit the unique nature of NYC as a very dense city, as a very unique city. So that's the general gist of how the code revision is set up. And then in terms of the code update, we're aiming for 2027 right now as the time when we can wrap up our current revision, but that's what we're aiming for.
Thank you. And as more mass timber projects come online, supply must follow. So I'd love to shift gears to talk more about supply chain development. I think it's, kind of coming across in your introductions that New York State has a real opportunity to develop a bioregional ecosystem. There is an abundance of softwood trees in New York State that's available today for sustainable harvesting, and also creates an opportunity for local jobs, from foresters upstate to urban neighborhoods here in the city. Meta, I'd love to shift gears to you. So in your research, what volume of mass timber are you seeing that New York State could sustainably produce? And can you talk about some of the job opportunities that this might create both upstate and downstate?
Sure. So our research, together with SUNY ESF up in Syracuse, with the foresters and forest experts up there, we looked into New York State's most abundant softwood species, that is eastern white pine and red pine. So those are significantly underutilized. They used a little bit. Cabinet doors, think of that. And they're largely unharvested. So we have vast areas of New York State's forests, which are both in private ownership and roughly half of them in public ownership. So that are sitting essentially untouched. So, and many of the old pine stands are now decaying and releasing, when they're old, they're decaying and releasing carbon into the atmosphere. And they're at risk of deforestation simply through, landowners selling the properties because there's just like no economic value that they see. But through regenerative forestry, these species can be sustainably harvested to produce NYNLT, the product that I mentioned earlier, to create structural mass timber products, floors, ceilings, and walls that are very well suited for affordable housing. So with a threefold increase in pine harvesting, New York could produce approximately 52 million square feet of NYNLT. That would be, sized for floors and structurally sized. Annually, enough to build more than 50,000 affordable housing units each year. So a New York State forest to housing ecosystem would also generate substantial employment across the supply chain. So upstate would include harvesting, hauling, grading, drying, milling, and of course, primary fabrication. And New York City jobs, but also, of course, other jobs upstate, could include mass timber prefabrication and on-site assembly performed by union labor.
And DOB has a role to play in supporting the innovation of new building materials as well. So Tina, could you talk about how DOB under its jurisdiction either regulates or supports innovators that are trying to include new products into construction projects?
Sure. In discussing that, your discussion, what comes to mind is the alternative materials route that is already written into the NYC Administrative Code. So if one wanted to pursue an alternative material or system, the code has a rough pathway for you, and that is through a group called the Office of Technical Certification and Research. So one can submit an application through that system, and there's no guarantee of approval, but at least there's a pathway forward for that kind of a proposal.
Thank you. And perhaps kind of connecting the line back to how do we get to a supply chain development, there is a bill currently proposed by Assemblymember Dee Barrett in the New York State legislature. It aims to introduce tax incentives for both affordable housing development and then also local mass timber manufacturing. So either to MOMO or to Meta, what investments should New York State prioritize in order to catalyze the build out of a supply chain that can truly reach across the state?
You want to start?
Sure. So the supply chain has changed a lot as well to catch up with the demand. And currently, I would say, just across the US, we are not short on raw material at all. I know Meta has mentioned that as well in New York State. But across the board, we have plenty of raw material ready to be used. And in terms of, if we're talking about CLT, for example, like raw billets as well, they could get cranked out very quickly, also not short on that material. So where the bottleneck is currently is sort of the fabrication, the CNCing. So mass timber is a prefabricated product, right? So it is all made and cut out by CNC for your project exactly. So that's where it takes a bit more time. So manufacturers will pop up more here and there as well. But we've already seen a lot more fabricators come online and fabricator suppliers, and that's sort of where they could be in New York State and much closer to the projects themselves. So instead of getting, that's where the supply chain is changing. So instead of going right to the manufacturers, we're just coming up to sort of fabricators and suppliers closer to the project.
So I have a few thoughts to add to this. To, thinking about building a robust supply chain, especially in New York State, for the New York State timber that we have such an abundance of. So what we would do is to encourage New York State EDC regional councils to invest in exactly what Momo just mentioned, primary and secondary manufacturing facilities capable of producing NYNLT, and to also support barge and rail infrastructure that can efficiently move the timber from upstate to New York City. Right? So we would also want to advance the adoption of Assemblymember Dee Barrett's FRAME Act that Gizem just mentioned, which would provide grants and tax abatements for the use of New York State-sourced mass timber products. So I think what we all would love to do, and I would like to see, is the building of a predictable, reliable, and also very diversified supply chain, including both large high-tech fabrication facilities that are really state-of-the-art, right? and small and medium scale prefabrication and shaping plants, both in upstate and downstate New York. And at the end of the day, policymakers should really support a diverse ecosystem of mass timber products, not a single product, including not only NYNLT, of course, but also CLT, DLT, GLT, and you name it, and whatever new and innovative and wonderful mass timber product comes about in the next few years.
Thank you. It's time to wrap, so one more question. I think what's very clear from all of your comments and responses is there's a role for everyone to play. It requires stakeholders across the value chain, from the AEC community to the development community to policymakers. A lot of these folks are in the room or listening online. So if you were to advise one stakeholder group, what would you say is their role in helping advance mass timber in New York? What resources should they pay attention to? How can they contribute? Or how do they take advantage of this opportunity right now?
I can jump in and go first. So just based on the Mass Timber Studio, I would say to industry designers, come to us with your proposed solution. Give us the technical advantages, technical disadvantages, and we'll do our best to work with you to find a successful resolution that is also safe per the code.
My vote is for the developers and investors. So a lot of times my project meeting assistance goes where an architect comes up to me and says, hey, we are proposing this mass timber to our developer and we need all the information you can provide us to help convince them. And I would love to invite more developers, investors to come out to a tour, to come see a building, drop in, join us on a seminar or webinar to familiarize yourself with what mass timber is. And there are a number of buildings in the city, but it's not so common that everybody knows what it feels like and what it looks like to walk into a mass timber building. And for all the designers in the room, extend your invite when you attend a webinar or come to one of our events, just to make it familiar for everyone across the board.
Sure. And I would like to offer guidance to Mayor Mamdani and all of the new city leaders and commissioners, given the significant role that they can play in New York's transition to mass timber. So I'd like to take a moment to speak directly to the mayor's team, as they may be in the room or watching on Zoom. So, Mr. Mayor and your team, by embracing prefabricated mass timber construction on city-owned land, you and your leadership team can rapidly deliver thousands of affordable homes for New Yorkers, the thousands of affordable homes New Yorkers urgently need. Mr. Mayor, by adopting low-carbon mass timber at scale, you and your leadership team can position New York City as a global model for climate-forward urban development. By supporting mass timber, especially when sourced from New York State, the new Mamdani administration can catalyze an entire ecosystem of green jobs and fabrication facilities across both upstate and downstate. And finally, I would like to say the obvious. Mass timber is a rare win-win-win for housing, climate, and jobs, and we encourage you to give mass timber a go. Thank you.
A big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. Okay, so that's some big picture thinking. We're going to zoom back into the projects themselves. The next set of presentations are highlighting mass timber at the intersection of site and materiality. And these projects in particular demonstrate how mass timber can transform New York City's waterfronts and public infrastructure, specifically park landscapes. So please join me in welcoming up the Dock Builders Pier, Shirley Chisholm Pavilion, Stapleton, and the Soundview Recreation Center.
This is the nexter. Okay, hello. Welcome to the second half. I'm Max St. Pierre, representing Sage & Coombe. Before we get going, I just want to thank both the EDC, Newlab team, all of our partners that helped us on the project, COE, Stantec, Socotec, Skanska in the house somewhere. I know, we're here. This is kind of an exterior rendering of our building. And so we're located on Staten Island near many other CLT projects that we've seen today. Just to kind of stage set, so whenever we show this project or talk about it, we're often asked two questions initially. One is, who are or what are the dock builders? And why did we choose CLT? So the dock builders are a team of DOT, kind of like hyper-specialized employees who go around New York City's waterways, kind of critical infrastructure, and maintain, piers, piles, docks, dock builders. And why CLT? I mean, beyond the environmental benefits that we've already kind of talked about and learned about tonight, its aesthetic qualities. There's also a long history in both like New York City and global maritime architecture and design of using wood and timber. And so we thought that this building kind of operating both on a working waterway and for the dock builders would be a great nod, both materialistically as well as historically. So the project, again, we're on Staten Island, probably easiest to locate yourself by the ferry terminal. We're part of a larger redevelopment of the Staten Island waterfront, this new esplanade, where this little red square on this larger new pier, and towards, I guess, the left of the screen is the new Stapleton waterfront project, which we're going to hear about next. So lots of exciting CLT, mass timber, et cetera, happening on this little area. Zooming in again, this is kind of our site plan, so to speak, and so our building really lives towards the water, towards the land side of this 700 square foot long new pier for the dock builders. It kind of operates as a bit of a knuckle, serving or connecting both the land side operations with the water side operations for the dock builders. You can kind of see, maybe the text is hard to make out, but the pier is largely a real working armature for the dock builders. There's material storage, loading of barges, there's truck access, and so it's really, kind of a very active site, and we're right there in the middle of it. The lower level of the structure, which is this kind of open work area, is a concrete beam and column structure. It's all open, and our CLT lives above, shown in orange in this section. And so that top line is the Mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency and Social Justice. I forget the whole name. But that's that top line. And so this is the section looking through that double height space, that kind of open working area towards the building. A plan, again, of that pier level. And so this is that kind of concrete structure that I was talking about. In this level is also a enclosed elevator access for building accessibility. And then above, which is really where the CLT kind of takes off. And so this is where the majority of the structure is all CLT and glulam, and there's a bit of a program, but we can go into that later. Some of the interior, and a bit of a shout out to the associate that we worked with, Kit, in the middle of the rendering. But the interior here is, it's got that nice warmth that we've all kind of are gravitated to with timber. We're leaving it largely unfinished, just a single clear coat. And this is kind of a view out looking from the office where we're really trying to connect the kind of maybe the administrative operations of the dock builders visually to kind of be able to observe both the open working area as well as the waterway action. And we kind of kept it to a really simple material palette. Things can, if you pick good materials, you don't have to do very much. And so we have a lot of wood for the interior. We have some corrugated metal paneling, both perforated and solid, polycarbonate, and bird-safe glazing. But then lessons learned. So this is where I think what we kind of went through in the studio really shines in the Mass Timber Studio. So this is a bit of a diagram making it most clear where the CLT exists and some of our connection details, which I'm about to go into. But I want to pause, and I know I speak fast, so I'm going to try to go slow right here. We started designing this building in 2018. It's now 2026, and this bulletin came out in 2024. And so a lot of the detailing and a lot of the design that we kind of worked on and kind of, worked through, as we all do, changed a lot. And the code landscape that we designed in is not the code landscape that we're living in now. And so there's been a lot of updates that we've done to our drawings. And I know our Skanska CM team is here somewhere, and they've been incredibly patient and helpful as we've had to continuously, maybe not continuously, but proactively adapt our building envelope to kind of meet these bulletins. And so maybe tongue-in-cheek, we've labeled this slide Type X JIP solves all problems. And I think if anyone has read the bulletin, it kind of solves all problems. But it also means that you're kind of constantly revising your your air barriers. It means you're looking at your envelope kind of over and over again. And so that's something that we've been working through quite a bit and making sure that we're staying up to code. And another is concealed spaces. And so if Type X JIP solves all problems, like so does mineral wool, right? And so if you can't sprinkler it, you have to fill it. And so these are two areas that we looked at really closely, and these are just two examples that exemplify these two conditions. And so here we're looking at one of the building, an eave on the building, as well as the pier level condition. And so originally these areas in blue were just designed to kind of the energy code minimum for insulation, and after that bulletin, it just got filled up. And again, this is working with your CM is important. And so that's on the architectural side, but some of that has also drifted into some of the shop drawings. And so I didn't say it already, but I think we're the only project in the room that is actively in construction. There's no shovels in the ground yet, but we're working through submittal shop drawings and kind of some of the piers being built. And on the left side of the screen, we have kind of V1 of the shop drawing. On the right side, we have V2. And the change is small. So what we're looking at here is in red. It's hard to see, but there's 3/4 inches of exposed, non-fire protected steel. And that alone throws it off, as we've learned through our bulletin. And on the right, it's a simple solve, but it kind of gets you across the line, which is just notching out the CLT slab and lowering the entire glue lam assembly to cover up that steel connection. But it's things like that, like these 3/4 inches that have been hard, maybe challenging to trace through all the drawings and details. Some are more obvious. The before connection here, we have a large knife plate, lots of exposed steel, lots of exposed connections, and our CM and construction team came up with some very creative details to tighten this up and to put everything inside the timber itself. And I think that this is a rare moment where the building code, I think, leads to a better building, like aesthetically at least, where we're able to really tighten up the envelope, tighten up the building, and conceal those connections, and that's happening not necessarily by us or by our design, but by the regulatory environment we're following. And so I think this is kind of harping back to the first presentation we saw about material storage and staging. And so we're working on a pier, and they're only pouring up to the building before they finish. And so we have almost no area for material storage or CLT storage. And even if we did, again, it's about 2 trucks. And so what the plan that's been devised is this kind of tri-state journey. We're staging the material in Rhode Island at the CLT manufacturing site every morning at some ungodly hour, driving down for a just-in-time delivery in Staten Island, crossing 3 states, which is, I'm not waking up that early, but whoever is, good on you. And this is a fun little animation we put together, not means and methods, but something to kind of highlight how this might be. And so this is a moment where, our CLT shows up, our very diagrammatic fire stair appears to 2 levels above the working deck. That's all on until there's this little magic moment where our stair appears, the steel stair on the outside of our concrete structure. Fire stair can leave, truck leaves, and then building gets finished. And just to keep everyone updated, these are some photos from a deal somewhere in here about some current progress on the building. So we have piles in the water, which is really exciting. Some of the bulkhead being built on the image on the right. And most recently, a colleague of ours kind of, I think, rode his bike by and showed some of the pile field that they're looking at. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Good evening. I'm David Yum from Prospect Park Alliance. Prospect Park Alliance is the nonprofit conservancy that works very closely with New York City Parks. We're sort of the forgotten or misfit sister of New York City Parks. Prospect Park, unlike the more famous Olmsted Park here in Manhattan, is truly the heart of the community. Central Park gets many visitors, many from out of town, but Prospect Park really is the backyard, the lifeblood of so many people. And one of the great things about being in the design and construction department at Prospect Park Alliance is that we get to know each of our 29 historic structures really well. We get to see them throughout the week, all year long. But more importantly, we get to see and interact with all of the users every day and see how they use the park, how they use it well, where they can use it better. And I think that it's not only this opportunity to really know our client, and we are our client as well, but over the years, we have a client that we truly deeply care about because we're with them all the time. Prospect Park, many historians say was one of Olmsted's great park designs. He loved it. 10 million visitors every year sort of attest to that. But when it came to designing the Shirley Chisholm Pavilion, Shirley Chisholm was this figure that's so beloved by so many communities on the east side of the park in Brooklyn. It was also this great opportunity and almost obligation to practice what we preach in terms of sustainability. It's one of our missions in the park, being a park, to preach nature and sustainability. And mass timber was this obvious choice. And it's our first project in mass timber. And I have to say that really without the timber studio, I think we would have accomplished it, but with far less knowledge, far less finesse. With mass timber, it's almost as if we were able to leverage all of the great experience from all the cohorts and as well as from EDC. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam Ding, one of the architects on the team.
Hi, everyone. Like David said, my name is Samantha Ding. I'm an architect with Prospect Park Alliance in our in-house design team. I'm really excited to present to you today the Shirley Chisholm Pavilion. NYC Parks is our client, and Arab, who's here today, is our structural engineer. And we're definitely the smallest project that's being presented today, but I think you'll find it very exciting. I'll talk a little bit about our project background, the mass timber design specifically, and then looking ahead in our timeline. So first, to start off, the Shirley Chisholm Pavilion is located at the southeast corner of Prospect Park in Brooklyn, at the corner of Parkside Avenue and Ocean Avenue. This side of the park, especially this corner, is historically disadvantaged. It's not quite as wealthy as the west side of the park, bordering on the Crown Heights and Prospect Lefferts Gardens communities. So we're excited to give back to the community, especially with the legacy of Shirley Chisholm. Currently, there's a disused restroom there, dashed in. The restroom was not a part of the original Olmsted and Box plan at Prospect Park Alliance. We're always looking at the historic Olmsted and Box drawings and trying to understand the ideas of this landscape architect. So this restroom was built in 1930 designed by J. Sarsfield Kennedy, the same architect as the picnic house in Prospect Park, if you're familiar. This is the current view of the site from the southeast entrance to the park under the historic pergola, and then a view from the west on the right-hand side. Because this is a publicly funded project, the program of the pavilion was developed after many community input meetings held at different spots around Brooklyn, and it showed us that community members' most important priorities were a working restroom, shaded seating area, and importantly, information about Shirley Chisholm's life and legacy. The siting of this pavilion was very important. As you can see in the circle on the bottom right-hand side, the future Shirley Chisholm Monument, which is upcoming hopefully this year, is very close by. We're also very inspired by historical elements around the park in all of our projects. And our design inspirations included the terracotta in many of the historic buildings, including the tennis house and Willink restroom. Rustic timber structures influence our desire to use mass timber, of course, along with sustainability. And then the Shirley Chisholm Monument at that corner. And of course, Shirley Chisholm herself, who was a bold leader in the Brooklyn community before becoming the first Black woman elected to the US Congress. Although our project is still in schematic design, there's a few building elements that will remain throughout these iterations. Notably, the terracotta screen on which display panels about Shirley Chisholm's life and legacy will be displayed, the mass timber branching tree columns, which I'll talk about more, and the CLT green roof. As you can see in one of the iterations of our schematic plan, we show 4 mass timber columns in the center, supporting the covered seating space with terracotta screen all around, as well as seating abutting the existing restroom and attached to one of the columns. To go more into the mass timber design aspects of the building, the technical assistance sessions that we took part in as part of the Mass Timber Studio program were really helpful. Woodworks was able to provide us with, on the left-hand side, examples of mass timber column designs that were very close to our design intent and helped get our juices flowing in terms of connection details and how to talk to our structural partners at Arup. And then on the right-hand side, this project is a publicly bid project similarly to ours. This means that we have another kind of consideration in terms of procurement because the publicly bid process means that the partner that you work with, the mass timber partner that you worked with during design may not end up being the one that's chosen in the end, which can provide some design inefficiencies. So that was an issue that we were investigating. We were also able to schedule some fabricator calls due to these bid concerns. We wanted to start conversations with fabricators early. We wanted to understand the capabilities, the species, the size constraints, and their manufacturing capabilities in terms of machinery. And that was also very helpful. And our column criteria, so the column was kind of the most important mass timber design element of this project. And our criteria was that the max span would be 12 feet or less to fit on a standard truck, to keep the column cross-section at the ground level to a minimum, since this is already such a small project, and then to have 4 meeting branches come into a column. And then we worked closely with our structural engineering team to study some different column geometries, including, for example, for triangles that would meet into a square, Of the second one version, which is a version where a steel plate becomes the connection point between the branches and the columns, and then a cruciform column and even a hexagonal column, which is essentially the same structurally as the cruciform, but with some infill to create a different kind of look. In the end, the cruciform column was the best balance of form that we liked and a small cross-section and didn't require large visible steel connections. 4 glulam branches come together with a steel crown and a base plate. And an example of a framing plan for a slightly different plan configuration showing how the CLT roof spans would work with the branching columns, and kind of giving you an idea of the issues we were looking through. This is an interior view showing the columns, skylight, terracotta screen, and then, of course, the display panels that are around the perimeter that will give information about Shirley Chisholm. This exterior shows its relationship to existing restroom and one of the entries to the pavilion coming from the southeast corner of the park. We were also able to conduct a life cycle assessment using Athena Impact Estimator and found that when we switch from a baseline of steel columns and roof to mass timber, the total project embodied carbon is reduced by 20%. Notably, the mass timber columns and beams netted a negative global warming potential, which was amazing. And looking forward for our project, this kind of shows our current timeline. Because we build on a landmarked park, we're in the midst of working through public reviews with landmarks, and then afterwards we'll be able to start the construction documents process, et cetera. And yeah, our team has really enjoyed being part of the Mass Timber Studio. Thank you all for your time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Ward. I work for a company called StructureCraft. StructureCraft is a mass timber builder and designer. So I myself am a structural engineer. And StructureCraft is a vertically integrated firm, meaning we go from designing our structures to detailing them to actually fabricating and then finally building them. So I'm really excited to be working in my hometown of New York City. I was born and raised here. I've worked on projects around the country, or mass timber projects around the country, but this will be my first mass timber project here in the city. So the Stapleton development is in Staten Island. It's been mentioned a few times previously. So the project site, I think like we all know, is on the north shore of Staten Island. It occupies about 5.5 acres of a formal naval base on the site, and it's kind of been reimagined and redeveloped over the course of, I think, the last like 15 years. And finally, in 2024, EDC put out an RFP, and our team, which consists of GF55, Artemis, Star White House, and EGA engineers, were the successful team. And so we've been working on this project since the successful award. We're currently just in schematic design, so we're kind of at a very early stage of development, so it's going to be a little bit of what that presentation, what this presentation is focused on, is some of our early studies into designing a residential, big residential mass timber project. So some project stats here. So the project is spread over 7 separate buildings, which are kind of split into two massings. We do have a 1-story concrete podium at the base of the building, and that is for a number of reasons, but most importantly is due to the flood zone that we're in. So this being a waterfront property, flood design is top of mind. So there will be a lobby and parking structure in the first level, and then followed by mass timber built above that. Our height is 65 feet, which is, again, restricted by the Type 4 heavy timber building code, so which is the currently only accepted mass timber type here in New York City. So we are restricted to a top height of 65 feet. But the square footage, I think, is the big top line number we all want to see, right? That's 600,000 square feet, right, of residential mass timber, right? So this is a very large project here in New York City, built on, one of the few remaining more open sites here, and obviously in a great location. We're going to have more than 500 units, and the mass timber, as we'll see a little bit later, will be a mass mid-timber deck. We're considering many different options. CLT has been mentioned, but also obviously DLT or others are in the running. We have a cross-section here of our timber structure showing the first floor flood cellar and parking, with then the 6 stories of residential built on top. You'll notice here we have a setback, which will help us bring some openness and some outdoor areas to some of these units, which we'll talk about some of the challenges with the setback, especially when we talk about mass timber. As part of our initial studies, these were a number of framing options that we started to develop. One of the challenges with working with residential, especially multifamily residential here in the city, is oftentimes these layouts are like jigsaw puzzles, right? They're closets go here, bathrooms go there, kitchens go here. It's sort of a maze of different walls to get the most out of your floor area. And that usually lends itself to a flat plate concrete construction. If you're familiar with construction here in the city, most residential projects will pursue that building construction type. With mass timber, we work on more of a regularized type of system, right? Meaning that we have to have somewhat consistent column spacings and much more of a linear design. Another thing with mass timber is the biggest driver of of mass timber volume is the thickness of our deck, right? And that was a huge driver here when considering these framing studies, is that versus going from a 5-ply or about a 7-inch thick CLT or 6-inch thick DLT deck to a 3-ply or a 4-inch DLT deck saved a lot of timber volume and came out to be some of the lower volumes that we were showing here. And so one of the biggest kind of breakthroughs that we had was to start aligning the layouts of our more typical units to a grid system that would allow us to go with a much thinner deck, right? So you'll see here we're talking about a 4-inch mass timber panel and a 24-inch deep typical purlin, right? And so the column layout that we came up with was worked at around 11 feet on center, right? And so this is just an example of one of our typical bedroom layouts, and you can see, right, it's that 22 feet, which nicely divides into 11, or 11 divides into 22. So we were able to really align a lot of these columns with the demising walls between units, right? From there, we continued the development of that 11-foot grid, but one of the key innovations that we came up with was actually skipping a column on the exterior of the building. So while we were able to keep the 11-foot spacing, to keep the thickness of our mass timber panel to be low, skipping a column on the exterior, right, is going to allow us more flexibility when it comes to placing balconies, when it comes to designing the fenestration, and also when it comes to just laying out the apartments in general. So the skip column design on the outside, I think, is pretty unique when it comes to other mass timber buildings I've seen prior. It introduces a girder on the exterior, but allows a more column-free facade. Another big challenge that we were coming up against was this setback that I mentioned before at the 5th floor. So one of the nice things about skipping these columns on the exterior is we are able to align a transfer girder. Instead of every 11 feet, we will have a transfer girder every 22 feet, right? Being that it's carrying load from above, our transfer girder is going to have to get deeper. One of the things that we are looking at is actually, instead of using maybe what more traditionally might be a steel beam, but in order to keep depths reasonable, we're thinking of using a steel flitch beam, right? So incorporating steel where it's necessary and where it's useful is one of the key benefits and sort of drivers of our design philosophy to keep the project in using as much mass timber as you can, right? And with a steel flitch beam design, from the exterior, right, it actually looks like a mass timber beam. You don't see the steel. The steel is concealed within it, but the mass timber reaps the benefits of using such a material and is able to still look like a mass timber structure. We conducted a life cycle analysis. Like I mentioned before, a baseline type building for this type of construction would be a concrete flat plate building, right? I think if this were, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, that would just be sort of a no questions asked type of design. But as you can see from the analysis, using mass timber gives us really amazing benefits when it comes to embodied carbon. A lot of that does come from the sequestration of the timber, I think has been mentioned many, many times before. We're still at a very early stage, still figuring out procurement. So a lot of these numbers were kind of based on national averages, but could obviously be refined, especially if New York State is able to bring on some more manufacturing capabilities rather than having to go to places such as Europe or the Pacific Northwest or Canada to source our mass timber. So I'm just going to close with some final images of the site. Obviously, one of the benefits has been shown before of mass timber is for residential mass timber, is the use of biophilia and you don't need to finish the interior surface, right? You don't need to put spackle, you don't need to put gypsum everywhere. You can live inside of a building as humans have done since the dawn of time, right? Living with the natural material, living with wood, and having it exposed on the interior, right? So I think this project is going to be, an amazing project to see. Obviously, these views are going to be unbelievable, and then combining that with the warmth of wood is going to just make for a really special place. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to EDC. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we're the caboose. Typically, when it's the middle of January and it's 15, 17 degrees outside, the attendance attrition is low. But not when it's mass timber. It's still packed. I can't believe we're still all here. It's almost 8 o'clock. It's amazing. So we're here to talk about Soundview Recreation Center. And this is an internal rendering of the gymnasium, which of course features the main component of the mass timber for our project. And this was done in collaboration with many incredible partners. Snøhetta is the architect for this project, and they assembled a stellar team. But before we dive in, I do want to shout out EDC and the partners for this cohort. I think it's such a refreshing moment in time in this city around mass timber, and of course, all of you being here is a true testament of that. So kudos to the city, the EDC, for really pulling this together and pushing us to think like this. So the team is for this project is very robust, and Snøhetta assembled it very strategically. I'm John Swalker. I'm a principal and the managing director of Beyond, which is a global sustainability consultancy headquartered here in New York. Allison Burnett, senior sustainability specialist, LCA expert, also has done a lot of work in mass timber. So we're really excited to talk about this project that Snøhetta has designed for us. So a little bit about the scope. This project is located in the Soundview neighborhood of the Bronx, actually in the middle of a park. Not quite as large as Prospect Park, but still a really important amenity for the community. And so the Parks Department wanted to add a rec center in the park itself. And so because of that, the design really wanted to follow the importance of feeling like you're in the park still, not just a normal building off the street. And you'll sort of see that in the renders as we walk through this. It's 3 stories. It's a little over 45,000 square feet, and it's anticipated to open in 2029, January 2029. I will just say really quick before we dive in, this project from a sustainability perspective, because we are the sustainability consultants, is quite robust. It's pursuing LEED Gold. We're teetering on platinum. It's got geothermal wells. We're going to talk about EO 23, which of course a lot of you know about. It's got the green roof, which complies with local law 9294. So there was a lot of really progressive policy actually from the city that drove the design, which will show you why mass timber really just made sense for this project. It wasn't really a super deep analytical process, although complicated, but how we came to find ourselves with the solution of mass timber was just what made sense for this project. So some of the design goals that Snowhead had put out for this project include inclusivity. We wanted this project to be welcoming to everyone, and so you'll see that in sort of the design, very inclusive, very front door to this park. Enrichment, so offering program that enriches the neighborhood all hours of the day. Connecting people to nature and natural systems. Allison and I are really keen on, we've heard biophilia mentioned every single project tonight, which is amazing. Allison and I come from a background of biophilic design, and so hearing that is really important. And so this project, of course, we wanted to ensure that the connection to nature and natural systems was not just in the park, but also the mass timber components. And then, of course, a gateway. It was meant to be a gateway to the park for the people who live in this community. So again, just a little bit about why mass timber. I think that was a question we've all been asking about this pursuit, because it is complicated, as we've all sort of discovered. But again, like I mentioned, it was a natural sort of conclusion of all the sustainability drivers, Executive Order 23, which of course you have to measure your embodied carbon for your project for city projects. Connecting people to the park, supporting occupant wellness. We've heard about people talk about the lovely tone and the connection to wood and how that makes us feel is very important. And then also being strategic about where we put it. So a lot of sports facilities can feel very cold and very sterile. But when you do something like this, and you have a lot of natural light, it feels very warm and it feels very comforting. And so I think that was really important for us. And then of course, just as I mentioned, the larger city goals, and it was really encouraging to hear you talk about how we have local law 97, which is really important around operational carbon, but we're moving towards embodied carbon and really understanding the importance around that. So we wanted to get in front of that and support the city's climate goals. So I'm gonna hand it over to Allison.
Yes, so just to give a little more context to the actual design of the mass timber for this project, and John's mentioned this previously, but the mass timber was really concentrated to the main focal point of the project, which is the gymnasium and indoor track roof. Therefore, it could be exposed and experienced by all occupants who enter this facility. And mass timber was a natural choice. There was actually very early on in the project a consideration between the 3 classic structural systems, steel, concrete, or full mass timber. And a hybrid structure just made the most sense early on in this project because of programmatic layouts and other challenges with regulatory compliance. So the team decided to put mass timber really at the focal point, at the, where we could get the biggest bang for a buck for this project. Alongside that, the team also chose to keep the structure rather simple and straightforward. It's a long span glue lam beam structure with a CLT deck and a concrete topper. So very standard details. And this also eased a lot of the compliance challenges throughout the project. Although the mass timber was just isolated to the gymnasium roof, we found through the life cycle assessment of the embodied carbon of the structure, it still has a substantial impact on the life cycle of the project. So just this simple substitution, we see a 6% reduction over a typical steel frame roof. And if we count the carbon stored in the mass timber components itself, the biogenic carbon, we see a 21% reduction. And although those of us well-versed in LCA know that it's not always straightforward to just simply count all that carbon storage, we know at least that carbon is being sequestered out of the atmosphere for the lifetime of the building. Hopefully afterward, if we have good circular design frameworks. So we know it's still providing a climate benefit. It's slowing climate change. So in terms of lessons learned, John's also mentioned this as well. Mass timber was kind of a natural choice at the beginning of the project, but it has reinforced a number of the Parks Department goals, the city agency goals, and the larger city climate goals, particularly since this project must pursue LEED Gold, and we're hoping it goes even to platinum. This is reinforcing some very specific LEED credits that we hope to pick up through this mass timber design. It's also reinforcing, Executive Order 23 and kind of that roadmap towards a low embodied carbon construction across the city. And since it's also a public project, it's a capital project, it's showcasing like the future of what construction could be in the city. And along with that too, the team kept it simple. It's a hybrid structure. It's the mass timber is isolated to the roof, but that still means that there's meaningful reductions in the embodied carbon, and it also eased regulatory compliance. So next stages. This project just passed its 100% construction documentation deadline, so that was a big milestone for the team. Though, of course, that's not the end of the challenges for this project, and I think other projects as well have touched on this. Procurement, particularly for mass timber, is going to be our next hurdle, and because this is a Parks Department project, a capital city project, it is subject to open bid requirements, which means we can't pre-select a single supplier or product before we get that final bid. So we'll be working closely with the contractor that's selected and the final suppliers that are selected to ensure that we can still sustainably source this timber, as well as meet many of the other material requirements that LEED in particular dictates. And then beyond that, we also will continue to work with city agencies. This project is not only subject to the New York City Building Code, but a number of other specific agency requirements. So we have to, continue to work with them and meet all these requirements. But we're finding mass timber has really brought together a number, or satisfied a number of these intentions already. And so with that, we hope by 2029 to have delivered a new beacon of sustainable design for this community and the larger city. Thank you.
Okay, and that takes us to the tail end of our program. So much work has gone into making very concise 7 to 8 minute presentations. I do have to say that it takes a lot of effort to take 8 months of meetings and technical assistance sessions and to develop a comprehensive narrative. So thank you to all of the project teams for showing up with having the work done and also the willingness to collaborate with all of our program partners. There are a couple folks that I'd like to call out in the room by name. So in particular, a special thanks to the technical expertise of Momo Sun and Jason Reynolds from Woodworks, our funding partners Ryan Flum from the Softwood Lumber Board and Colin Buntruck at the U.S. Forest Service. The studio really is a collaboration of industry and public entities at both a city and federal level, and it's been really great to be able to continue that work across multiple cohorts. We've also been fortunate to collaborate closely with an outstanding team at DOB under the leadership of Assistant Commissioner Keith Wen, including Elizabeth Suarez, Tina Matthew, Nashit Rumi, and Ever Umana, and with FDNY represented by Chief Cantorman and 2 chief inspectors who are in the room tonight, so Lois Romero and Danielle Callahan. And of course, the day-to-day operational excellence of Newlab, so Sydney Grushak and Ferris Kamaray. All of you have been so instrumental in guiding this second cohort to the milestone that it's hit today, but of course the work continues beyond this evening. So as we close the formal programming, I invite everyone to stick around and engage in conversation. Connect with the project teams, ask them your one-off questions. These discussions are where we turn a lot of these innovative ideas into action, and where the next wave of innovation for the city will begin. So on behalf of EDC and on behalf of all of our partners, thank you so much for being a part of this evening. We hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Thanks.